universe of music is so large. The more you know, the more questions you have, and the more you realize you don't know. So I feel like I've been doing this for my whole life, and I don't know shit. I don't know anything, you know, except that I know I love what I do, and I try to learn all the time. It's just an endless journey, and you never even get close to. So there's tons of new stuff I'd like to learn. Bill Evans actually recommended me because we had played a few gigs in Boston in a little tiny club. There was like 5 people there. And me and Bill played, and Bill really liked my playing. He said, you know, I'm playing with Miles Davis and we're going to go on the road. And I said, yeah, sure. I didn't believe him. And then I realized he was telling the truth, but he had another great guitar player, Barry Finnerty, and it just didn't work out personality-wise. I mean, Barry's a wonderful player, so it wasn't the music, but the personality-wise, it was weird. So Miles decided to try somebody else. He was looking, and Bill recommended me, and then Miles came, and I was when I was playing in New York with Billy Cobham, and I hadn't moved to New York at that point. I was living in Boston, but we were on the road, and we were playing in New York at a place called the Bottom Line, and I played with Billy, and Bill Evans said, you know, I'm bringing Miles to come to hear you the second set, so play your ass off. So I did the best I could with that, of course, and Miles really dug it, so he hired me to play on this last tune of his comeback album, and it was called Fat Time, which has a long guitar solo, and he used to call me Fat Time. He liked my groove, and I guess, and you know, he liked the time feel, and also I was heavy, so he called me Fat Time, and so Fat Time he used to call me.
Mike and I were playing with Miles. It was the early 80s. Miles had just come out of retirement. I think he had maybe been in retirement for 5 or 6 years. So it was very exciting. Everyone was excited to see what Miles was going to do. And Miles made Mike Stern the primary voice after Miles. In other words, Miles would play, and then it was Fat Time. You know, it was time for Mike Stern. He wasn't that fat, but you know, he wasn't a skinny guy like he is now. You know, and Mike stepped into the light, man, and did his thing. And it had to be very difficult because being in Miles's band, there's a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure from people, you know. Are you equal to the other people who have played with Miles, you know? And of course, you can't worry about that. You just have to play, you know. The nice thing was that Miles was very supportive. And Miles would tell Mike, I like the way you play. So should you be worried about anybody else? And Mike had to say, well, yeah, you're right, you know. So we played together for like 3 years. We went on the road
it was just wonderful to hear. He was very loose with the whole thing. He was very like gut level genius kind of. He never really overanalyzed anything. He would just suggest stuff, and then he'd play certain things, and then the band would kind of figure it out. And then just hearing him play night after night with so much soul and so much heart. And that's true with all the people I've gotten a chance to play with. That, you know, that their main kind of, I think, priority is to just play their hearts out. You know, with Joe Henderson, who was an amazing tenor player, I got a chance to play with him, tenor saxophone. Of course, Michael Brecker, Jacko Pastorius, and Dave Sanborn, and all the people it's too many to. I've really been lucky to play with all these people, and they just play their hearts out. They think a lot. They have interesting things to play, and interesting vocabulary. But the first thing is the attitude, the heart. That somehow just comes out as the first thing, no matter what the hell they're playing, which is usually really great stuff. But it's played in a certain way. So, and that's what music is about. And that certainly Miles was the strongest at that. And then, of course, he didn't care. That was how he judged music too. So he loved Charlie Parker, which was a little bit more intellectual also, than maybe more chords and stuff, than maybe Jimi Hendrix. But that was very brilliant too, in a way. I mean, really, in a natural way, incredible what Jimmy did. But he didn't care. He just liked the vibe, the attitude. That was the main thing for Miles. That's how he would judge music, not like whether or not it was this or that in terms of the content, but just the soul of it was the first thing. So if Hendrix was as heavy as anybody for him, he got just as excited about him as John Coltrane, you know. So it's cool. And he also did like to connect to people. He had a really good balance, I thought, and it made his music stronger, of doing what he wanted to do musically and not caring what anybody thought, and also wanting to take that, whatever his music was, and connect to people, because that's what music's about. It's language. You want to express it to other people. Otherwise, you can just stay in your garage or in your apartment and do whatever you want to do. So part of it is that balance, and it makes the music warmer and more inclusive to other people. And he was a genius at that. He was really amazing at having that balance, I thought. Just incredible. So I'm still learning from Miles. I always will be, and a whole bunch of other people. The 60s kind of opened things up in some ways, in many ways, to people starting to collaborate in different styles, kind of coming together. But that was happening even before the 60s, because in a way, jazz is a kind of a fusion between European harmony and African rhythms, they say, you know, kind of in a strict sense in a way. Of course, it's not quite that, because it's like any other kind of language. It's kind of not so one way or the other. But it was kind of a combination of influences. But also jazz is a huge word. You don't know what you're talking about when you say jazz. You could say Louis Armstrong, or you could say Miles Davis. You could say early Miles Davis, later Miles Davis. You could say Sonny Rollins or John Coltrane. Everybody has. There's lots of room for creative, you know, all kinds of creativity in improvised music, I think, and in music in general, but certainly in improvised music. So I'm just glad to be playing anything. I think of myself as a jazz musician, but with a lot of other influences that come out of my playing. I love doing it, but it's hard. For me, it's hard. It always was. I was really slow getting it. It took me forever to get even where I'm at, and there's a lot more to learn, of course. But I just stayed with it. I knew I wanted it, so I was really stubborn, and I just practiced and practiced, and then kept asking questions and this kind of thing. And when I was trying to write music, I was real shy about writing music, because then you write it down and people can look at it, and I thought, oh, this is terrible. I would write 3 bars of music or 5 bars of music, and then say, that's a good idea, let me try to finish that and then go to the bridge, you know. So I'd play the idea over and over again. Maybe I'd go a little further, and then I'd play it 20 times to figure out what the next part might be, and then I'd say, oh, it's terrible, it's stupid, and it's not worth it, so I'd rip it up. So I had a really good teacher. His name was Edgar Grana, and it was very hip for him to say, you got to finish what you do. Don't judge it. You can write a second draft, third draft later, or you can throw it away if it really sucks, you know. And generally, that was how I kind of learned how to write. It was a long time ago, but also I was really out in those days. I used to drink a lot and do a lot of everything, and throughout a whole bunch of the earlier years. But it was really a great experience. So the thing is, I was 22 when I joined the band, and I'd never really been in an international kind of stage like this. So it was really interesting to play with them. And I thought I was going to, Pat Metheny, who I was studying with at the time, said, all you need to do is play. And I was really shy about my playing, and I thought, okay, you know, he said, just get gigs, and I was kind of scared to do it, but he said, you just need to play, you got what you need, you've learned a lot in school, so he was pushing me in a good way and very supportive, and he heard about this audition for Blood, Sweat and Tears, and I went and did the audition, and I figured, well, there's no way I'll get the gig because there's a lot of other really good guitar players, and I got the gig, you know, and then I thought, now what am I going to do? And I kind of learned what it was like to play in a bigger stage with more people and that kind of stuff, and got more relaxed about it over time. And it was just, they were amazing really wonderful musicians in their band. So it was, and a very cool concept. So it was really cool. I was very grateful to have gotten to do that.
Come on, let's keep playing. I'm doing my twirl. It's an honor to play music with Mike Stern, and even more honor to be his friend. When I was little, my older brothers would drive many hours from the state of Virginia, where I used to live. They would drive up to Boston, Massachusetts, where Mike was playing, just to go hear Mike Stern and the many other great musicians that were playing in that area. And they would make recordings and bring it home and play them for me, you know. So Mike is someone that I've known about for years. So he is one of my musical heroes. So for me now to get to play with him is like a dream come true. And it's another opportunity for me to learn. It helps my career. People know me because I play with Mike, and because Mike is such a legend, it makes people think more about me. So he really helps me, whether he knows it or not, he helps me. But it's really just a big honor for me to get to play music with him and to be a friend of him.